What's up guys, Tuna here. In today's video, I'm going to be updating you guys a little bit with all the learnings and findings for the Gencry build. Basically anything that you need to know in order to transition from the campaign into endgame, and what you need to do to basically start dealing damage in reds and all that kind of stuff. So it has been a little bit tough progressing into reds because there was a lot of things that I also didn't know and have learned, and can now sort of show you guys and explain everything that you need to know in order to have a much smoother progression and pop off in the new league. So the Gencry guy, as you can see, is doing pretty well in red maps. He's not juicing any content whatsoever at the moment yet, but my gear is very rudimentary and I am using some very basic stuff. I've basically just successfully swapped to critical strike, and I will explain a little bit later in the video how you can do that yourself. However, I do recommend that you do remain non-crit until you have some very few crucial pieces that I will explain as I will show in the PoE that is to follow. So first of all, let's get into the PoE. If you look here in the PoE, level 44 to 54, you're still going to be using Earth Shatter. If you roundabout match that here with the gem setup, 38 to 67, you see that we're using Earth Shatter with close combat, melee fist damage, and fist of war. We're going to be using that ourselves. However, we are already using an auto exert, general scry, pulverize, Earth Shatter setup as well. And this is going to be popping a lot and very fast. The reason for that is because we are first ascending into the cooldown recovery rate, and it's going to be dealing a substantial amount of damage by basically popping all the spikes over and over again. However, keep in mind that as soon as you swap the Cyclone, this is something that you want to swap out of, because the cooldown recovery is going to be too much for your Tech Slam dudes to basically deal their damage before they are replaced. So keep that in mind. However, I have streamlined the tree a little bit for you guys. One thing that I really want to note is that while you're leveling, a lot of people are having mana issues. And the way that you solve mana is either you grab a jewel, which I can show you guys here in game. You can get a jewel such as this that grants physical attack damage leached as mana. And this is basically going to solve all of your mana issues. Or alternatively, you can buy a Praxis ring, and which is going to cost around 1 chaos, and it should tie you over until a little bit later. However, I do recommend you grab a Fizz Leech jewel, because that's just going to fix all your mana issues. And later on, when we progress later in the tree to level 54, which is when we do our Cyclone swap, you're going to be getting Life Leech that way as well. So let's cover the Cyclone swap. See here, if we click the tree there as well. So here we have the level 54 to 67. And you can match that up with here level 67 to 83. I should make this like a little bit clearer, but essentially you Earth Shatter until you can respec into the tree. So around level 54, level 50, you can respec to Earth Shatter. So yeah, here I'm like level 69 at the end of this respec. And the main things that you want to be doing is you want to be grabbing martial experience so you can get your life leech, and you want to be taking your endurance charges first in order to basically get your Tech Slam of Cataclysm to deal a bunch of damage. And a very crucial piece as well is Chaos Sign, because you want to be getting 2 of these. They're really cheap, and the good thing about Chaos Sign is that it gives us Enduring Cry. Enduring Cry is going to allow you to have endurance charges on single target, since you are going to be using on your Cyclone endurance charge on melee stun. And endurance charge on melee stun is good. However, on single target, you're not going to be stunning, so you're not going to be getting endurance charges. And the way that you get endurance charges is through using Enduring Cry for single target. Because if these drop off, you basically deal 0 damage. So just keep that in mind. Right. So with this gem setup as well, you're going to be using Auto Exert Earth Shatter still. But you can swap that to a Tectonic Slam of Cataclysm as soon as possible. So as soon as you get that Tectonic Slam of Cataclysm, that is when you're going to want to be getting all these endurance charges here on the tree. And you put that into your auto exertion 4 link, and then you can still actively use Cyclone yourself. That way your boys are going to be Tech Slamming while you are Cycloning, get endurance charges, and you deal a bit of damage with Shockwave, as well as these guys just dealing the single target nuke. Now make sure that you are always using Blood Rage. Blood Rage is going to be the way for you to generate frenzy charges, as well as gain a bit of attack speed. And also at this point, one more thing to note is that you are no longer going to be using Pride, since you are dealing majority of your damage is fire damage, so you no longer actually get any benefit from Pride whatsoever. So you're going to be swapping your auras to Blood and Sand, Herald of Ash, Herald of Purity, and a very low level clarity to just give you a little bit of mana regen in situations where you might end up with no mana. And, you know, obviously to leech, you need to hit something. And if you can't cast Cyclone, well, yeah, this is going to be covering you a little bit, helping you out with a little bit of mana regen. So yeah, level that up, but don't level it too high, because otherwise you're going to be getting into a little bit of trouble as to, you know, get your mana back. So to reiterate, the level 54 to 64 tree that you can find in the PoE here, this is going to be prepping you to swap to Cyclone. And the thing that you need for Cyclone is you need to use a two-handed mace or a staff. The importance of that is because you cannot use Shockwave with an axe. So what you're going to be looking for is a two-handed ace or max that deals a little bit of physical damage. One thing that you could buy is actually a Towaha's Felling. This is a level 61 unique, and it's relatively cheap on the market right now, and it deals a ton of physical damage. This is going to be really strong as well for when you're using Earth Shatter. So if you're using Earth Shatter still, like, you can swap to this, and it essentially just gives you a massive damage boost. And it's going to allow you to swap into Cyclone much more easily as well. So grabbing that will be really nice. However, if you are looking for a mace, like a rare mace or something like that, this is currently what I'm using. It has 518 physical damage, and I'm doing red maps with it, though the really nice thing about this one is that it has hits can't be evaded, which allows me to go into critical strike. However, yeah, something around 500 physical damage is going to be great. That is why Towaha's Felling, which has, you know, 583 physical damage, is going to be more than fine to get you into red maps, and the only thing that's going to be getting you then is going to be your links, as well as other gear, clusters, and that kind of stuff. The next step I want to cover is, of course, the Cyclone swap. And once you swap to Cyclone, you can see here that you swap a bit of things on the tree, you respec out of this, and you're going to be going into deep breaths. Now, this is really important. The deep breaths is going to be what gives you the cooldown in order to, you know, have decent uptime on your boys while still not replacing them. So at this point as well, you can see that we are swapping from here from the cooldown recovery rate of Warcries into the nearby enemies convert 50% of physical damage to fire, and also grabbing Ancestral Defiance in Merciless Lab. As soon as you do that, your character is going to feel relatively tanky, and you're not going to feel the need of having a defensive aura. That's why we're also keeping Herald of Ash, Purity, and Blood and Sand. The main thing that you're going to be missing on this character early on is going to be damage, but with Towaha's Felling, you're going to basically be popping off. And another small change to note here is that you're going to be sort of pathing down here to these endurances here and grabbing the damage per endurance, and also a few nodes here as well. This Fire Mastery is really insane, so as long as you're non-crit, this is going to be definitely really good to grab. 100% increased damage against ignited enemies, and it grants you chance to ignite enemies on the way. All the masteries as well give a substantial amount, like, you know, increased damage versus uniques, and that kind of stuff. But yeah, grabbing this cluster here and also putting minimum power in it is what it's going to be generating you your rage as well as your endurance charges at the start of maps. And then you'll path up here for treat enemy monster resistances as though they are inverted. And that pretty much sums up what you will need to swap the Cyclone, the weapon, as well as the tree. And then further on, you'll be going to 83 plus, and this tree is programmed for level 93. So basically additional nodes that are going to be buffing out your damage and doing that kind of stuff. One other thing to note is that you do want to be grabbing the fire conversion here. This way you're going to be getting a lot of value out of, you know, inverted resistances as well as penetration and that kind of stuff from your tech slam guys. And yeah, it's going to deal a lot more damage. Now, a few things to note is that Jungrown has also done a variant of this build, and his variant is really good as well. If you want to check him out, make sure you do, because he has some pretty good insight on how to get into endgame without doing a crit swap and popping off that way as well. But one thing that I saw him do that is really nice is that he's using an Its Series Promise as well. So you can put an Its Series Promise, if I was to put any slot here. And what this is going to be doing is it's going to be giving you a bunch of damage as well as leech, but more importantly, chaos resistance. Chaos resistance is actually quite rough on this build. Getting a ton of it is really hard. You do have a lot of gear pressure, especially early on. And I do have to say that I am very surprised by how little items there are on the market in general in this event, which has been one of the things that has really made the progression much, much harder for many people, especially since a lot of people are struggling to get into red maps. Because of the fact that the sustain is not great and the idols are non-intuitive and you have to trade for them and all that kind of stuff. But I digress. I hope these trees are going to be helping you guys. And I'm also going to be linking my current tree in game. I'm going to be taking a snapshot of my character and putting it in the video description as well. So that way you guys have an idea of what you need to do to go from the PoB into a crit swap, which I am doing right now, right? So you would have to get like a mace with critical strike chance, decent physical damage, it can't be evaded, and then basically swap the crit nodes from there, and you can gain use of like abysses and a rose thorn. There's a few things that you will need to keep in mind to give you like a lot more damage, and those things are going to be things like tinctures. Tinctures are absolutely insane. Tinctures can basically double your damage. So getting a tincture, like a prismatic tincture with penetration on it, or once you swap the crit later on, rose, what is it called again? Rose thorn tincture, be very good for your damage. So yeah, getting a prismatic tincture, something like this. Cooldown recovery is obviously not great, but you'd want increased burn or whatever. Yeah, this tincture will give you like a ton of damage with the penetration, and I do highly recommend that, because that's going to be basically your nuke button, and with the leech you will have plenty of mana open for you to essentially just use that and have really good uptime on it for the duration of a fight. To reiterate for single target, you will be using Desecrate, so you walk up to your single target and the rotation is sort of like this. If I could show you guys in the video here, I fight the boss towards the end of the map. So what I will do is I walk up to the boss, I will click Desecrate once. Here I made some corpses, but what you will do is you will Desecrate here. You see I Desecrate, and then I will just basically start cycloning on him. And at this point as well, this is when you want to pop your tincture, which I'm not sure I did. I did towards the end, but yeah, that's basically how you let off like big damage. And yeah, I mean, this is nothing too impressive. I think I was doing a T14 map. However, yeah, we got rid of him pretty fast there, as you can see. So the damage is pretty good once you have everything lined up, once you have your boys spawning and that kind of stuff. All right, so first of all, I would really like to thank Exporo, Mofir, and Kana for contributing to the spreadsheet here. I will link this in the description. What you can do is you can go up here, click File, and make a copy. And once you make a copy for yourself, you will be able to input any sort of things that you want into it. So, what we want to figure out is our attack rate, the number of warriors, and the cooldown that we're going to be getting. The hit damage and DPS is it's something that you can calculate as well, but it's not necessary to understand the cooldown recovery that you need to maximize the damage for your Tech Slam. So first of all, attack rate, how do we find that? The way you would do that is if you were to have a PoB, you would click New here. So you import your character first of all, and the way you import your character, you would do it from here. So you would import your character there. And then you go through here and you put a Tectonic Slam of Cataclysm on an independent, sort of like on its own here. See? Or alternatively, what you could do is you could go into your auto exertion and disable this. So if we were to remove the auto exertion from there, we go into Tectonic Slam of Cataclysm and also remove the General's Cry. You can see that I have an attack rate of 1.35, and you can always Control Z, you know, to undo that, and then obviously the attack rate would get a little bit messed up, but yeah, we remove that. And you see that I go back to Tectonic Slam. Sorry if I actually messed that up. We can go remove Gen Cry, and we go into Tech Slam. We have an attack rate of 1.35, and what we want to do is we want to input that here, so 1.35. And then number of warriors would be 5, and what that outputs is that I want to have a cooldown of 1.544. The way you find out what your cooldown is this might seem a little bit complicated, but it is pretty straightforward. What you want to do is you want to go into Calcs, and then you select your Tectonic Slam General's Cry. You click then General's Cry, and then the cooldown will show up around here, which is 1.7166, as you can see at the moment for my guy. So I could actually reduce the cooldown further by 0.2 seconds, and then I would be in the sweet spot. However, you can also remove some attack speed to get further closer to the sweet spot. So if right now it tells me that I have a cooldown of 1.44, if I was to reduce my attack rate to 1.2, for example, it would go to 1.6. If I go to 1.1, then it would be 1.65. So what I could do is I could remove some attack speed nodes on the tree, or alternatively try to get a little bit more CDR that way by applying quality to my auto exertion or Gen Cry and all that kind of stuff. So that is how you calculate the Tectonic Slam cooldown and that sort of stuff. And yeah, and the spreadsheet that you need to do that. Another question I got asked very often is when do you swap the Gen Cry? And that is kind of outlined here in the POP. You can swap the Gen Cry pretty much as soon as you get it in Act 3, and then I will just be chucking Earth Shatter into it. I can find the POP thing here. I think it's around level 23 to 38. You can see that I already have General's Cry with Pulverize, Earth Shatter, and Auto Exertion while I'm using Sunder or while I'm using Earth Shatter. It doesn't really matter. Like, you can use Earth Shatter or Sunder. It depends on what you prefer. Sunder is better early on, and it gets like really a lot better later. Earth Shatter. That's why I swap to Earth Shatter around here. You can see, yeah, around level 30, I had to swap back to Earth Shatter. That's going to be complemented by the tree as well if we swap to that. It's a little bit confusing with all these like different loadout swaps, but yeah, bear with me here. So you grab the cooldown recovery rate there, and then Earth Shatter is just basically going to pop off. And yeah, that's when you get, that's when you swap to Gen Cry. However, when you swap to Cyclone, that is a little bit more complicated because at that point, that's when you're going to be respecting the cooldown recovery rate. That is also showing here. So around level 54 to 64 is when I do the Cyclone prep. I will be grabbing Endurance charges. So by this point, Endurance charges, you'll have Enduring Cry from your Chaos sign. And then another thing that you will have is ideally, you would have already had Tectonic Slam of Cataclysm. So you're going to be getting Tectonic Slam on your Gen Cry boys. And that's basically when you'll be swapping to Cyclone. And make sure that at this point you have already a Jewel with Fizz Leech, because Cycloning without Fizz Leech is awful, and that you grab the Life Leech here as well. A lot of people have also gotten this a bit confused, but you cannot use Shockwave with an axe. That is why we are respecing here in the level 54 to 64 tree. We are taking all the axe nodes out in favor of, you know, generic two-handed nodes, and we are going to be using a two-handed weapon, a hammer, or sorry, a mace or a staff, ideally a mace. And if you can afford Tao's Felling, then you're going to be wanting to grab that. Level 61, that's a huge damage boost. And yeah, at that point, you can use Shockwave Cyclone. Yeah, bear that in mind. You will need a blunt weapon for Shockwave. All right, so how do you deal more single target? There are some buttons that you can press on this build that will make you deal substantially more single target. So one of them is going to be Blood Rage for a little bit of extra attack speed. Another one is going to be Punishment. Punishment makes enemies take more damage when they are on low life. So below 50%, they will take 50% increased damage. Pretty nice. And another one is what I showed you earlier. It's going to be a Prismatic Tincture like this with penetration on it, ideally. But yeah, a Prismatic Tincture with increased elemental damage with melee weapons is the implicit. Then penetration, going to give you a huge damage boost for single target. So you press those two buttons and you'll basically just snap and deal a ton of damage. Though make sure you're desecrating, otherwise you're not going to be spawning your Tech Slam boys. That pretty much sums up everything that you need to know up until the point where you want to be swapping to crit. So let me cover a little bit of what you need to know to go from this into critical strike. So I'll take the example of my character currently in game. So I swapped the crit when I got a weapon that had critical strike chance on it, and I recombed this weapon. The way that you recomb it is relatively complicated, but I can explain it here real quick. All right, so what you're gonna want to be doing is you're gonna get two bases to alt spam, and you're gonna want to use definitely not this two-handed weapon. You're gonna want to be grabbing the let me grab it here, two-handed mace, and you will want the Karui Maul because it has the highest single sort of like damage on it itself. It doesn't have the highest PDPS, but it does have the highest physical damage on it. So let's click it there. So what you'll do is you alteration spam until you have percent physical damage. It's going to be like T3 or T4. You know, T4 you can settle as well. So T3 or T4 is a starting weapon, something like that. You know, T4 is pretty low. That's what I did with mine, but yeah. And then you're gonna want to regal that, and you're hoping not to hit a prefix. Now I hit attack speed, which is actually insane. But if you do hit a prefix, for example, if I was to regal and it hits a prefix, there we go, like that. This is unfortunate. You're gonna want to annul, and if you annul the physical damage, then it's a bit sad, right? But yeah, ideally you'd regal a suffix. And then at this point, what you want to do is you want to craft. So you're going to want to go to your crafted edge and craft something that does not natively roll on the weapon. So for example, something like chaos damage, right? It's a prefix and does not natively roll on the weapon. make sure that it's a prefix. Then you're going to grab a second weapon base, and here we can open another Craft of Exile, create item, and then on this weapon we will do physical damage as well, but this will be flat physical damage, and it's going to be much easier to roll, like grabbing a T1, right, for item level 77. This one is like fairly difficult to roll, but yeah, T2 or T3 is also fine. And you're going to do the same thing. You will regal, you hope to not hit a prefix, and then you will put a prefix craft on it. For example, something that does not natively roll on the weapon. So you can go here to crafts, crafted, and spell damage, right? For example, and we can craft spell damage. And now when you put these two in the recombinator, you will have a 31% chance of the percent physical damage and the flat damage to be merged together on this weapon. And what you could do is you could do the same thing with suffixes and then have a go at potentially putting those together. However, then we get into multi-modding and things get a little bit complicated. So that might be a video for another time. In any case, this is how you get a decent starting weapon, something better than Tao's Felling, for example, or how you get into critical strike. Because this way as well, you can get you can craft critical strike on the suffix, or you can craft hits can't be evaded on the result. What you'll end up is something like this. So physical damage, hits can't be evaded, and crit. So another thing to mention is, now that you've crafted your weapon, is you will 100% need Secrets of Suffering to go for a critical strike variant of this build. And to get the cold damage, you're going to have to craft percent of physical damage converted to cold. Now, even though 100% of your physical damage is converted already to fire, what this does is it takes a portion of that and it converts it to cold. And this is going to allow you to inflict Brittle. And of course, you will also be inflicting Scorch through Secrets of Suffering, right? And yeah, at this point too, you make sure that you are dropping the mastery that does inversion, because yeah, you're gonna want to be obviously not inverting resistances since you are reducing them a ton with Scorch, as well as exposure and that kind of stuff. But that is the two key points that you need to swap this to critical strike. Then you can also go for an Abyssus and respec your tree to grab a bunch of crit on there. But that is essentially all that you need to know, hopefully, to have a much more smoother progression from the early game into mid, into late game, and into this critical strike swap. And I hope this video has been helpful for you guys. And sorry it didn't come out sooner, but I was playing the game a bunch and yeah, enjoying myself. But yeah, thank you very much for watching, everybody. Hope this has helped, and I hope to see you guys again soon. I'll be streaming on Twitch if you have any more questions, so be free to come there and ask anything you want. And otherwise, out everybody. Have a good day.